Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today is the first day of the Barnes & Noble 50% off Criterion sale, which started today, June the 30th, and it is planned to go until July the 28th. And I'm standing here in my Criterion hallway, and I thought I would just pick a few titles just as recommendations to show you maybe ways you could start your Criterion collection if you haven't started already, or maybe just adding some titles that you don't have and that you've been thinking about for a while. So I thought I'll just zoom in and pick a few titles just randomly with maybe a few thoughts about each one, so that maybe you have some ideas of some films to pick up for the sale. I mentioned this before on the channel, but I keep my Criterion collection in spine number order, and I thought I'd show maybe a couple of the early spine numbers that you can pick up. I mentioned this on a live stream too, Silence of the Lambs. This is really a great release from the Criterion collection if you don't already have this one. And so I highly recommend this one if you can pick it up. Also, I'm a big fan of Abbas Kiarostami, and this is a good one to start with, Taste of Cherry. If you haven't seen this one before, it's a really beautifully done movie, very meditative, and one of my favorites. If you are into Alfred Hitchcock, this is also one of the earlier films from Alfred Hitchcock, The 39 Steps. It's a good one to pick up. I was watching this movie the other night, The Lady Eve. This is also featured. I don't think this is actually in the feature, but there is a feature on the Criterion channel about screwball comedies, and this is certainly one of those. Just amazing to see the chemistry between Henry Fonda and Barbara Stanwyck, and this movie is written and directed by Preston Sturges, but a really amazing film. I love the artwork on this release also. One of my favorite Jim Jarmusch movies is a movie I've talked about before on the channel, Down by Law, but this is one I regularly revisit. And I love on the Jim Jarmusch releases that he does often a very long Q&A. It's just an audio Q&A, but he takes questions from viewers, and I really find it interesting. I often sit on the couch with a notebook and write down a lot of his responses because he talks about other movies and other books that you can pick up. So I highly recommend this release also. If you're into Shakespeare, this is one of the best versions of Richard III, produced and directed by Laurence Olivier, and I just love this version of the Shakespeare play. As you know probably from the channel, I'm a big fan of theater, and so I love to revisit these plays that have been turned into films, and like I said, this is one of the best versions that I've seen. If you're a fan of Robert Altman movies, this is a movie I've collected twice. So you can see I have the DVD here, but also this is a version of Shortcuts on Blu-ray, and I'm really a big fan of Robert Altman. This has so many celebrities in it as well, or so many stars in it. Andie MacDowell, Bruce Davison, Julianne Moore, so many others, Matthew Modine. Tom Waits, I think, is even in this one also. And this is a really great movie to pick up, all interconnected relationships and stories, and I really love it. It's one of my favorites. David Mamet, also one of my favorites. I love this cover. This is a version of House of Games, which is a really interesting mystery if you like those types of stories. And so I recommend this. Also, this release has Ricky Jay, who is one of my favorite magicians, in it. And this was directed by David Mamet, the playwright, and features Lindsay Krause and Joe Mantegna. One of my favorite Buñuel films, Simon of the Desert. This is a pretty short film, but I really enjoy it. Again, very meditative. It's also very comical in some ways, and I really enjoy this movie. This is a DVD and probably needs an upgrade from Criterion, but I'm fine with the DVD. I've talked about this movie before on the channel, Bergman Island, but one of my favorite documentaries about one of my favorite directors. This is also included in the Bergman box set, and the sales are a great time to pick up a box set if you can, but I love this single release. So if you're maybe just first getting into Bergman, this might be a way to understand how he is as a human being, how he is as an artist, but I just love this documentary. Another very meditative film on, especially in the summertime, is Paris, Texas, Wim Wenders movie, one of my favorites, one of the best performances, I think, from Harry Dean Stanton. And I love this film and regularly revisit it. One of my other favorite documentaries is this documentary about Robert Crumb. Very interesting documentary, very detailed about the artist Robert Crumb, and so, it's one of my favorites. I've got a couple of box sets here too, and again, as I mentioned, the sale is a good time to pick up a box set. This is one of my favorites too, and it is the America Lost and Found, the BBS story with Head, Easy Rider, 5 Easy Pieces, Drive, He Said, A Safe Place, The Last Picture Show, and The King of Marvin Garden. So this is one place where you can pick up a lot of films. Most of these are from the 70s and really enjoy them in a box set. So I love this. I love the artwork on it also. There's another box set that's one of my favorites. I know there's been a 4K release on this too, but this is the Three Colors trilogy from Kieslowski, and this is the Blue, White, Red trilogy. Highly recommend this if you haven't seen it. I know there's been a 4K on this and a couple of other releases, but I'm perfectly fine with my Blu-ray of this, and I'm going to keep this. I'm not planning to upgrade this, I don't believe. One of my very favorite films is this version of On the Waterfront with Marlon Brando, directed by Elia Kazan. Lots of great features on this one too. I love the artwork. It's really beautifully done and one of my favorite films. This is a movie that I'll watch over and over again for sure. A nice old movie, I Married a Witch. This is, I think this is relatively inexpensive too. It's a film by Renee Claire and features, I want to say, let me just see, Veronica Lake, one of my favorites too. So I Married a Witch, which is very funny. It's a very funny comedy talking about screwball comedies. And I really love this movie a lot. So I think the last time I remember, this is pretty inexpensive. I forgot to mention in the beginning too that many times when Barnes & Noble is doing these sales, the prices on Amazon also go down to 50% off. So you might be able to find this one on Amazon too. I'm a big fan of the Beatles, and this is a release that is kind of a must-own if you're a Beatles fan. Hard Day's Night, directed by Richard Lester. This is packed with extra features and one of my favorite releases from Criterion. Moving down the shelf here, one of my favorite movies with Dustin Hoffman is Tootsie, which I've talked about on the channel before, directed by Sidney Pollack. I love that Sidney Pollack is in this movie, and he has a great part in it. If you haven't seen this movie, again, highly recommend it. Hopefully, as I'm going down my shelf here too, you can see all of my titles. So I'm just picking out a few as I see them to recommend. But certainly, if you see something else, I highly recommend all these titles. I love these films, and so it's really hard to pick sometimes. So sad to hear the news about Alan Arkin, but this is one of my favorite movies that he's in, The In-Laws with Peter Falk, directed by Andrew Bergman. When I first saw this movie, I didn't really like it that much. I saw it in the theater, and then years later, it became one of my absolute favorite movies. I love the humor in this. I love the chemistry between Peter Falk and Alan Arkin. And it's, again, so sad to lose Alan Arkin. He's an amazing actor. Let me know in the comments below if you have a favorite Alan Arkin movie, but he will definitely be missed. And finally in this row too, I was talking about the Val Lewton documentary that's on this release of Cat People. This is a Jacques Tourneur movie, a Val Lewton production. There's an amazing documentary on here, which I think was part of another box set not related to Criterion. And I'm so happy I have that. So many of these releases have, other films and full documentaries on them, and this is one of them. And so if you don't have this movie, I highly recommend it. Cat People, or these types of movies, to me are very, they almost put me in a trance. They're very meditative, and like I said, the documentary is really, really good on this release. In this area of the shelf, one of my other favorite Hal Ashby movies is Being There with Peter Sellers. I think this is one of Peter Sellers' best performances. I love Peter Sellers as an actor and performer, but he really seems to come into his own in this movie, and I think he's described it as one of his favorite films. And I love the direction from Hal Ashby. So again, if you don't have this movie, highly recommend picking it up. Those are just a few recommendations for the Criterion sale, the 50% off Criterion sale at Barnes & Noble, which again starts today, June 30th, and goes until July the 28th. I'll probably do a couple of more recommendation videos through the course of the month, and I'm also planning to put together my own order. Let me know in the comments below if you're planning to participate in the sale and what you're planning to get. There's so many great films out there, and I could talk about this for a long time, but I thought I'd just pick a few favorites randomly to show you today. Thanks so much for watching this video today. If you like this video, click on like, and if this is your first video, please consider subscribing to this channel. I would really appreciate it. I sincerely hope that everyone is safe and well, and I'll talk to you soon.